Hi, I'm Katie with Modern Textiles, and today I'm going to show you how to make a pillowcase. Super easy. So I've got a PDF tutorial if you'd like to download in the link below. It's going to give you a couple instructions, very simple to follow if you want to just go with what I've got going on here in the video. So I've got a fabric for the cuff of my pillowcase as well as the main fabric. These are both from Moda by Lizzie House. These super adorable candy canes. I'm going to make a couple of pillowcases for my kids to, celebrate the holidays. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to go ahead and layer my cuff fabric right side up with the fabric, and then wrong side up or right side together. I'm just going to go ahead and place this candy cane fabric. And I'm going to go ahead and just pin this really quick. I'm just going to go ahead and roll the main body of my pillowcase up. Just like that. And then I'm going to do one last fold in half here. So this is kind of the burrito method, hot dog method, whatever you'd like to call it. So I'm going to roll my cuff up, and that way all three raw edges, so two of the cuff fabric and one of the main fabric, will be here. And then I'm just going to go ahead and repin, making sure that that main fabric stays below so I don't sew into it. All right, now that I have my little burrito all pinned up, I'm going to go ahead and sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance. So you just want to make sure that that main fabric is well below where you're going to be sewing. I'm going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance right down here, and then I'll meet you back here after I sew that. All right, now that we have that 1/2 inch seam allowance sewn, we're going to go ahead and just pull the main fabric out of that little burrito, and that way everything will be flipped right side out. So now I'm just going to go ahead to my pressing station. I'm going to press that seam into my cuff, and then I'm going to go ahead and do just a top stitch along the cuff, about 1/4 inch to 1/8 inch, whatever you prefer, for a little top stitch, just to keep that cuff nice and stabilized. So now that we have our top stitch done on our cuff, I've gone ahead and fold right sides together my pillowcase. So I've got my 2 selvage ends here. If you want to, you could trim that off. I'm just going to go ahead and sew a 1/4 inch inseam on the inside of those dimples of the selvage, and then a 1/4 inch inseam along the bottom of the pillowcase. All right, now that I have my seam complete, I'm just going to take this to my cutting table and cut off that excess selvage to a 1/4 inch inseam, a 1/4 inch seam. And then that way, when I do my French seam, it'll make sure that I capture that whole seam rather than have anything poking out there. All right, so I've cut my selvage. Now's the time to flip our pillowcase wrong side out. And we're just going to want to make sure that those corners are fully pointed out. So with this, we're just going to go ahead, if you want, you can go ahead and press. I might go ahead and do that. I might press my seam just to ensure that I'm going to capture that 1/4 inch seam that we have on the outside. We're going to want to make sure we're going to do a 1/2 inch seam allowance along those 2 sides that we have our current seam on. And that way, when we flip this right side out, you'll have fully finished seams on the inside and giving you that really professional look. All right, now that I have my seams pressed, I'm going to go ahead and just sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance to capture that 1/4 inch seam along the 2 sides. All right, here's the exciting part. We're going to flip this right side out, and we have an adorable pillowcase. And in the next video, I'm going to explain all the things about sew-alongs and quilt-alongs.